She thought she was declaring war on a divided planet. What she didn't know was that Earth no longer bowed to diplomats. It crowned a king of war. And now, he's coming for her throne. The galactic throne hall shimmered with polished obsidian and gold-veined marble, echoing with the soft hisses of translators and advisors. Queen Lysura of the Xirellian Imperium stood tall beneath the vaults of her palace ship, her crown of silver thorns resting regally atop her pale lavender skull. Her voice rang out over the interstellar comlink. We, the proud blood of Xyrel, hereby declare formal war against the Terran sovereignty. They have denied tribute, violated our claim on Sector 412 Aleph, and must be taught humility. Her generals nodded solemnly. Her court of nobles whispered in approval. The humans, she thought, were still new to the stars, uncivilized, bold to the point of stupidity. A message must be sent. The image cut. Silence followed. Across the stars, on Earth, the response was brief. War King Daelen Voss stood atop the speaking platform in New Geneva, a towering man with dark eyes like steel and a jaw etched from centuries of military bloodlines. There were no jewels on his shoulders, no flowing robes. Only the polished armor of an earthborn warrior and the black sash of command that bore the names of fallen worlds. He spoke only one sentence. Let her come. Daelen turned and walked away as the room erupted into movement. Generals tapping into starship deployments, diplomatic aides screaming into comms, and orbital platforms awakening protocols locked since the siege of Luna a century prior. Earth had not gone to war in 50 years. But now that it had, it would not lose. Unlike the many squabbling worlds of the galactic core, Earth had unified under a single doctrine after the Fourth Terraform War: never again. The United Earth government abolished separate armies and created one entity, forged from ashes, the Sovereign Vanguard. And at its head was a man born into the program. Daelen Voss had never lived a normal life. Born in orbit during the last Martian rebellion, trained in subterranean war chambers, raised by generals and AI simulators, he had never known peace. Every day of his youth was spent learning to kill, lead, and survive. Where the Xirellians trained nobles in ceremony, Earth bred warriors in silence. He didn't speak in long speeches. He didn't posture with threats. He moved. Back in orbit around the Xirellian capital moon, Queen Lysura's command ship prepared to launch the first assault. Her intelligence officers chuckled at the lack of resistance in Sector 412 Aleph, calling it a barely defended farm world. She had sent her 5th and 7th fleets to conquer it quickly and declare it her newest jewel. It would never reach the surface. As the Xirellian fleet dropped out of slipspace, they encountered what no one expected: an artificial debris field laced with cloaked mines, automated missile nests, and a silent earthborn dreadnought running cold in the shadow of a dead moon. It had waited there for 3 days, ever since Daelen Voss had sent his single response. The dreadnought powered up without a sound. Within seconds, 10 Xirellian vessels blinked off scanners, torn apart before they could return fire. The rest scrambled, but it was too late. Earth's stealth fleet decloaked like ghosts, coordinated with terrifying precision. Plasma lances severed engines. Boarding torpedoes embedded in hulls like nails into coffins. Sector 412 Aleph was not undefended. It had been bait, and the Queen had taken it. On the bridge of the dreadnought, Admiral Daelen Voss, Earth's most seasoned war commander, watched the aftermath with cold efficiency. He didn't speak to the surviving Xirellian captains who begged for mercy. He recorded their pleas and sent them directly to the Queen's palace with the message: "You wanted war. This is our hello." Meanwhile, Queen Lysura paced her chamber, confusion turning to rage as the reports streamed in. She couldn't believe what she saw: losses in minutes, not days. Terran strategy didn't match any galactic war protocol. No warning, no mercy, no survivors. She slammed her clawed hand into a control console. "Send the first Imperial Armada," she ordered. "Burn their farm world. I want scorched soil." But Earth was no stranger to invasions. When her second wave arrived, they found the planet empty. Evacuated, yes, but also wired. Dozens of orbital rings had been converted into kinetic railgun nests, launching hundreds of city killer rods down into the fleet. There were no broadcasts, just annihilation. Earth didn't need to talk. It needed to win. Back in New Geneva, Daelen Voss stood in the war chamber, silent as satellite feeds showed the result. He tapped his fingers on the digital war map, eyes narrowing. "She'll escalate," he said finally. His second-in-command, Commander Lyra Foam, nodded. "Do we strike her home system?" Daelen shook his head. "No, not yet. Let her believe she has a chance. Let her see our restraint. She declared war. Let her regret it before we end it." Then he looked at the transmission logs again. He paused. Something wasn't right. The Queen had picked the fight, but the timing was too perfect. Someone was pushing her. Someone wanted Earth to unleash itself, and he intended to find out who. Because Daelen Voss wasn't just a warrior. He was a tactician trained to defeat empires. And now he had a queen's crown in his sights. The stars outside Earth's orbit flickered like distant candles, their glow barely reaching the edges of the black void. Inside the command center of the Vanguard fleet, Daelen Voss stood as a storm of data cascaded across the holographic display before him. The second wave of the Xirellian Armada had been decimated in under 2 hours. Yet, despite their quick losses, Earth's working didn't show a hint of satisfaction. There was no victory dance, no cheering. Dalen's mind was already on the next move. "Admiral Run," he said without looking away from the glowing map. "How long until the third fleet arrives?" Admiral Kale Run, a hardened veteran with decades of service to Earth, gave a brief glance at his console before replying. "They're 6 hours out, sir. Their numbers are staggering, but their morale has been severely damaged by the earlier skirmish. They don't know how to respond. We could decimate them, but the risk of escalation is high." Daelen didn't flinch. The War King's gaze remained steady, calm, almost eerily composed. "Let them come," he said. For a moment, the room went silent. Ren raised an eyebrow. "We're not going to retreat." Ren asked. "No," Daelen replied, his voice like the edge of a blade. "They're underestimating us. They believe we're just an isolated species. They don't know that Earth was forged in fire. We'll make them understand. We'll show them the cost of challenging a world that has known nothing but survival." As the clock continued to tick down, Dalen's mind raced through possibilities. The Xirellian Queen might have been ruthless, but she was not a fool. She would retaliate in force, seeking to break Earth's resolve. But in her haste to conquer, Lysara had made one fatal error. She hadn't anticipated just how dangerous the humans were. Earth's war doctrine wasn't one of mindless aggression. It was one of brutal efficiency, of counterstrikes that left enemies confused and broken. Back in the Xirellian flagship, Lysara watched the carnage unfold across her comms. The deaths of her soldiers weighed heavily on her. She had thought to crush Earth quickly, but the humans had turned the tables. The losses were mounting, and she was growing impatient. She paced around her command center, her sharp eyes flicking across the flashing displays of her dwindling forces. "Why aren't they attacking?" she muttered, frustration beginning to seep into her voice. Her second-in-command, Commander Daelen, approached with cautious steps. "My queen, their fleet is ready. Our scouts have confirmed it. They know we're coming. They're not retreating, they're waiting." Lysara's eyes flashed with anger. "What are they waiting for, then? Do they think they can scare us off with a few destroyed ships?" Commander Daelen didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed her a communication device. It was a video transmission, a message sent to her directly from Daelen Voss himself. With a sharp movement, Lysara activated it. The face of Daelen appeared on the screen, his expression calm, almost mocking. "You've made a mistake, Queen Lysara," he said. "You thought you were invading a defenseless planet. You thought Earth was just another weak world, ripe for the taking. But you've encountered something more. You've woken a sleeping giant. And now, the consequences are yours to face." The message was chilling. There was no anger in his voice, no rage. Only cold certainty. "You should have thought twice before sending your fleets. You've brought this war to our doorstep," Daelen continued, "and we've already decided how it ends." Lysara's hands tightened into fists, the edges of her claws scratching against her skin. She knew that Daelen Voss wasn't making idle threats. His reputation among the galaxy's leaders was well established. Earth's previous wars were legends, tales of humanity's ability to stand against all odds. And now, this man, this human king, was standing in her way. "We will crush you," she hissed, her voice low with fury. "You will regret ever defying the Xirellian Imperium." Dalen's image on the screen disappeared, but the weight of his words lingered. Lysara turned to her generals, her patience thin. "Prepare the fleet. We strike immediately. No more delays, she commanded. And this time, no mercy. 2 hours later, the third wave of the Xirellian fleet emerged from slipspace, their ships forming a terrifying armada in the void. Dozens of warships, their hulls decorated in battle banners and glowing runes, hung in the dark like a storm ready to unleash its fury. Lysara's armada was vast, her power unimaginable. But Earth wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Daelen Voss watched from his command post, his face lit by the glow of the vast fleet arrayed before him. His fingers tapped against the cold surface of the display as he calculated his next move. The Xirellians were powerful, but they lacked the one thing Earth had mastered: adaptability. He wasn't going to make the same mistake as his enemies. No, Earth's response would be swift, brutal, and decisive. "We deploy the vanguard," Daelen said, his voice cold but filled with authority. "Launch all assault craft. The Xirellians will learn that their size means nothing when they're up against a species that has survived 1,000 years of war." His orders were clear. The Earth fleet, small in comparison but infinitely more maneuverable, began their deployment, breaking apart into smaller squads that would engage in guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, swift assaults, and then vanish into the darkness. The battle was about to begin. As the first blast of energy streaked across the void, Daelen Voss watched with unwavering precision. The first wave of the Xirellian fleet, underestimating Earth's response, was already reeling from the human counterattack. It wasn't the strength of the strike that had overwhelmed them, it was the audacity of it. The Xirellian ships, large and intimidating, had been too accustomed to their own dominance in the galaxy. They had never met a foe like Earth before. Daelen had expected the initial confusion, the disorientation that would follow the unexpected arrival of Earth's fleet. The humans had always fought with an edge of unpredictability, but what the Xirellians didn't realize was just how adept Earth was at using guerrilla tactics to its advantage. The human fleet, though smaller, was agile and precise. Squads of fighter ships weaved in and out of enemy formations with deadly accuracy, striking key targets, disabling communications, and creating chaos within the larger Xirellian ranks. On the battlefield, Daelen was a master of adaptation, and it was clear to him that this was the Xirellians' greatest weakness. They had been too slow to change their approach in the face of human ingenuity. Lysara's fleet was buckling under the pressure. Her most formidable warships had taken heavy damage, and the morale of her soldiers began to fracture. Her fleet, which had once been a symbol of fear across the stars, now appeared vulnerable, fragmented. "Commander Daelen," Lysara's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Order the fleet to engage at full strength. We cannot afford to be humiliated by these humans." Daelen hesitated, his gaze shifting from the battle report to Lysara, her face twisted in fury. The damage reports continued to flood in. Human ships were everywhere, striking hard and fast, making the Xirellians' massive ships look clumsy and ineffective. "My queen," Daelen said cautiously, "our forces are faltering. The vanguard fleet is too well coordinated. If we go in headlong, we risk losing everything." Lysara's lips curled into a snarl. "You doubt me, Daelen?" Her eyes gleamed with rage. "I will make them pay for their insolence. All units, full engagement." Her command was absolute, and despite the reservations of her subordinates, the Xirellian fleet regrouped and engaged at full force, charging toward Earth's line of defense with terrifying speed. Back in Earth's command center, Daelen Voss studied the battle's progress. The plan had worked thus far. The Xirellians were playing into their hands, clashing with the human forces at just the right moment. But now, with Lysara's forces closing in, it was time to take the next step. "Admiral Daelen said, his voice calm but urgent. "Prepare the vanguard for the final strike. We'll need everything we have to deliver the finishing blow." Admiral Rin quickly relayed the order. "Vanguard forces, execute Phase 3, he commanded. The ground began to rumble beneath their feet. Hidden in the depths of Earth's atmosphere, beneath layers of protection, a fleet of experimental warships powered up. These ships, a blend of human innovation and ruthless efficiency, were Earth's ultimate weapon, the Phoenix class, fast, nimble, and equipped with devastating energy weapons that had never been seen before in the galaxy. As the fleet rose from Earth's surface, bursting through the atmosphere like a swarm of deadly bees. Lasara's commanders realized too late what was happening. They had never expected such a move. Earth had revealed its hidden strength. An entire armada had been deployed under their noses. It was the beginning of the end. The battle that followed was a storm of chaotic beauty. The Phoenix-class warships tore through the Xirellian fleet, their weapons so advanced that entire warships were obliterated with just a few concentrated strikes. Lasara's forces fought valiantly, but they were overwhelmed, each of their ships falling like dominoes in the face of human technology and strategy. As Daelen watched from the command center, a sense of finality filled the air. His plan had worked. The Xirellian fleet was on the brink of annihilation, and Lasara's arrogance would cost her everything. However, in the midst of the chaos, a message came through the command comms, static-filled but unmistakable. Daelen Voss. The voice was Lasara's, full of fury yet tinged with something else, resignation. I underestimated you. But mark my words, this isn't over. You've won this battle, but you will not survive the war. Daelen didn't respond immediately. He knew the Queen was trying to buy time, perhaps even looking for a way to flee. But he had already made his decision. We didn't come here to survive, Lasara, he replied, his voice steady and resolute. We came here to end this. To protect Earth, and to show the galaxy that you can't just invade and conquer at will. There's a cost to every action, and today, the galaxy will remember the cost of challenging Earth. Lasara's image flickered on the screen for a brief moment before the transmission was cut off. Her final attempt at defiance had failed. It was over. The war had been won, but Earth's victory was not without cost. Daelen Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out at the remnants of the Xirellian fleet as the final destruction unfolded. His heart, usually a hardened instrument of strategy, felt the weight of the lives lost on both sides. The Xirellians had been relentless, but humanity's survival had been forged in the flames of war for centuries. Daelen had never once doubted that Earth would rise to meet the challenge. And yet, in the aftermath, a new understanding had emerged. Earth was no longer just a planet hidden away in the dark corners of the galaxy, a world seen as insignificant. Earth had made its presence known. Earth had sent a message to every species. Never again would they be seen as weak. Never again would they be easy prey. As Daelen's fleet returned to Earth, he looked down at his home, a world scarred by war, but stronger for it. The universe was vast, but Earth's name would echo far and wide now, among allies and enemies alike. In the weeks that followed, Earth's position in the galactic community would change. And while some would be wary of them, others would respect their power. The war had ended, but a new chapter was beginning. And Earth was ready. The galaxy had taken note of Earth's resolve, and its newfound place in the vast expanse of space had left both allies and enemies contemplating their next steps. With the fall of the Xirellian Empire's fleet, the message was clear. No longer would the Earth be seen as a passive planet on the outskirts of galactic affairs. Earth was no longer isolated. It had emerged as a force to be reckoned with. As the days passed, Daelen Voss watched Earth's leaders begin to transform their approach to diplomacy and defense. The victory against the Xirellians wasn't just a military triumph. It was a statement to the entire galaxy that humanity, despite its relatively young presence among the stars, had the power and will to defend itself. But more importantly, it signaled a shift in how Earth would handle future encounters with alien civilizations. The United Earth Federation, which had once been content with relative peace, began to prepare for something far more expansive. A council of diplomats, military strategists, and historians gathered to discuss the next phase of humanity's evolution in the galactic order. One thing was certain: Earth had earned respect, but that respect would come with its own set of challenges. Daelen, you've proven what humanity is capable of, Admiral Daelen said as he stood next to Daelen on the bridge, gazing at Earth through the viewports. But the victory over the Xirellians will only be the beginning. Now, the galaxy will watch us more closely than ever before. Our enemies will never forget this day. Daelen nodded, his eyes fixed on the rotating orb below. Earth had won the battle, but it had opened a new chapter, one that would bring both opportunity and danger. I know, he replied, his voice heavy with the weight of the responsibility he now carried. The war with the Xirellians may be over, But the real challenge is just beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with species both ancient and powerful, many of whom would now look at Earth through a different lens. Some would see them as an opportunity to ally with a rising power, while others would view them as a potential threat that needed to be neutralized. The delicate balance of galactic politics would now center around the question, how would Earth respond? On the surface of Earth, political leaders gathered for a historic meeting. The United Earth Federation's Council convened in the grand halls of the United Nations, a place where decisions that would determine the course of humanity's future would be made. Daelen Voss, now hailed as a hero, was called to offer his insights as a military strategist. The decision to strengthen Earth's defenses and establish a more permanent military presence among the stars had already been made. The Federation knew that Earth's future depended on both its ability to maintain peace and its capacity to defend itself against those who would seek to challenge its newfound power. Admiral Voss, President Tessa Gray began, addressing the assembly. You led the charge that turned the tide against the Xirellians. Your victory has given us a new reality, a reality where Earth is not just a part of the galaxy, but a central player. How do we move forward? Daelen stood, his posture steady, the weight of his experience evident in his calm demeanor. The Xirellians were a wake-up call, but we must understand that our enemies will adapt. They will see our strength and test it. We must prepare, not only for military engagements, but also for the delicate diplomacy that comes with our position. We will need allies, and we will need to forge new relationships with those willing to see us as equals, not as a threat. The key is balance, strength when needed, and wisdom when navigating the political landscape. President Gray nodded in agreement. We can't afford to be isolated. Earth must become a central power, not just in terms of military might, but in the economic and political spheres. If we don't extend our influence now, others will try to step into the vacuum. As the discussions continued, it was clear that Earth's path would be shaped by two forces: the need to defend its sovereignty and the desire to integrate into the galaxy's complex political web. The Federation's military would remain a force capable of striking fear into any aggressor, but it would also be essential for Earth to build relationships, trade, and establish alliances with those who might see their value beyond just their military prowess. Back in space, Daelen watched as the Phoenix-class warships, Earth's most advanced military fleet, returned to the planet after the battle. These ships were a symbol of Earth's new era. They had been the backbone of humanity's victory against the Xirellians, and they would play a critical role in the future. But even as they docked, Daelen knew that the real test was still to come. The vastness of the galaxy was filled with civilizations, some peaceful, some warlike, and others with ambitions that could rival those of the Xirellians. Some would seek to exploit Earth, while others would look to challenge its dominance. The victory over the Xirellians had given Earth an edge, but Daelen understood that the peace they now enjoyed was fragile. Admiral Voss, a voice broke through his thoughts. It was Commander Kira, a trusted officer and a key part of the Vanguard. We've detected a strange signal coming from the outskirts of the Centauri system. It's not Xirellian. We think it's another civilization. Dalen's mind raced. The Xirellians had been just one of many threats, but there were countless other species in the galaxy. Prepare a response team, Daelen ordered. We'll investigate, but keep it quiet. I don't want anyone to know we're watching them until we understand what we're dealing with. Kira nodded. Understood, sir. As the team prepared for what could be another diplomatic mission, or perhaps a confrontation, Daelen knew that Earth's future depended on more than just military power. The galaxy was a game of alliances, and those who could navigate it with both strength and intelligence would survive. The final chapter of the war had been written, but Earth's true journey had only just begun. With the Xirellian threat extinguished, the galaxy would now look to the next chapter in its history, a chapter that would be written by humanity's hand. What Earth would become, Daelen could only imagine, but one thing was certain. Earth would never again be a passive observer in the galactic struggle. They had proven their strength, and now they would prove their wisdom. As Earth's ships prepared to venture further into the unknown, Daelen stood ready. The universe had seen what Earth was capable of, but there was much more to discover, both about the galaxy and about themselves. And whatever the future held, humanity would face it head-on.